Hi. So this is our that
It's always hard to start.
yes. Hi, we're here today with Matt Williams. We're going to be talking about ending the stigma and being a mental health ally. And just first want to say welcome, Matt, and thank you so much for coming on the interview and talking to me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yes. It is my pleasure as well. I want to start by asking, what got you interested in this topic?
Well, a couple things, actually. For one thing, I have been living with bipolar disorder that was diagnosed in 2003.
Okay.
I had it a long time prior to that, and I just never felt comfortable talking about it or even exploring it. And so it affected my life and a lot of other people's lives. So I had a reaction to some medication in 2017. They changed the generic. I wasn't absorbing the medication properly, and I ended up in the hospital.
Oh.
I didn't have seizures, but I ended up in the hospital. So that was part of it. That got me thinking more and wanting to talk more. But also, being in IT, there's an anecdotal idea that creative people have a higher incidence of mental health issues. It's an anecdotal. It hasn't really been shown to be true in various studies. That said, IT people, there's a lot of creatives in IT. So I wondered if the incidence of mental health issues in IT was higher than the background population within the US. And that's how I started investigating this, and things kind of went from there.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah, that's a really interesting story there. I'm glad that you shared that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So let's talk about mental health and kind of its relationship to medical issues and similarities and difference to other medical issues that you might encounter.
Well, in a lot of ways, if you have a hormonal imbalance, you'll take a pill, right? A lot of mental health issues, not all, but a lot, are also due to various imbalances in your body. And so, treating one thing with a lot of stigma that you might take a pill for versus another, part of your body might not be working properly. Serotonin is primarily produced in the intestines. Insulin is produced in the pancreas. If your pancreas stops working properly, you have diabetes. There's not really much stigma involved with having diabetes.
Right.
And yet there's still a lot of stigma associated with mental health issues. In the United States, approximately 1 in 5 will have issues with mental health in a non-2020 year.
Right.
In 2020, it's far more common. I haven't seen any studies as yet. This is just gut feel and anecdote talking to people. But given everything that's been going on in the world, having, anxiety, having depression in 2020, that's a normal response and a normal reaction to everything that's been going on.
Yeah.
So there's nothing abnormal with having mental health issues. Now, just like any other health issue, you don't want it to control your life, and you want to do what you can to take care of it.
Absolutely.
And, the first part, and it can be the hardest part, is looking for help. Well, even before then, saying, you know what, something's not right here. I need help.
Having the awareness to recognize that.
Yep. And, sometimes a family member might say something. Sometimes a coworker might say something, or, somebody in your religious community or friends or what have you. So, you might not necessarily be the trigger, but recognizing that, okay, I need some help is pretty much the first step to take.
That's really good. Thank you. So, I'd also like to talk about, and something that I've heard you talk about before is being an ally, and how you can be an ally to people with mental health, with mental illness. What do you recommend? Do you have any recommendations as far as that goes?
Well, first off, the let me say something that I found that I have to be careful of as I was investigating this and putting together the slides. There will be a link for the slides available that you'll be able to see. This is a talk which I've given before, and I've Creative Commons the slides, so please feel free to use them, copy them, so on and so forth. They tend to be a bit more verbose than slides I normally do, as a result of potentially other people using them. And at the end, there's about 12 slides that's all resources.
That's great.
That said, though, it's very common in our culture that if you hear something that you think is outrageous or, just wow, you might say, that's crazy, or, that's insane. And this is something that I found that I do. And I do it less now, but I still have to be very cognizant of me doing it, because, words like that can trigger people, especially if they're feeling very uncomfortable to begin with.
It's very normalized, right? I mean,
exactly.
And it can be, in my impression, it can be kind of off-putting to people who feel that they have mental illness, and I'm sorry, keep going. I apologize.
Oh, no. It's all good. It's all good. So from that, first off, caring about people around you is an important thing. Listening to them, watching what you say. Don't say things like, oh, you can't be like this forever. Get over it. You are so sick. So you're depressed. Aren't you always? These are things that you might say to somebody who's closer to you. But nevertheless, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Don't use it as an excuse. These are all things that can really hurt people. Things that you can say. I don't really understand what's going on, but I can offer my compassion. I can listen. I can hear. My ears are open. I care about you. I want you to be healthy and happy. You can survive this. You're not going to drive me away. You're not alone. You're important to me. Obviously in a workplace, some phrases might be more appropriate than others, but you might even just say, hey, let's go get a coffee. Let's go talk. It's not as easy to do in the days of COVID, but you could still, in some ways, it's almost easier because you just open up a private chat channel and say, okay, let's talk. Hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Yeah. Another way that you can check or to help people and be an ally for people, to be there for them, is check in on your friends, check in on your family, check in on anybody, especially now in COVID. It's, all of us have been affected to one degree or another.
That's so true.
And so, just doing hey, I was thinking about you. How are you doing? Are you okay? Is your family okay? Are those around you okay? A lot of people that are younger, kids, are really, really being affected by this. And, if you have kids in your family, then it's going to affect you as well. People don't like seeing people who are hurting. Sometimes you might feel like you have to walk on eggshells around somebody who's going through some anxiety or going through depression. So it really affects everyone around the person who is having a mental health issue.
I've definitely seen the effect that it has on my kids. I've seen the effect that it has had on people that I know that have mental illness. And, it's just, it makes everything more difficult.
Oh, yes, it does.
It's so, I think one of the things that you point out is it's just so important to have that base of caring about other people. And when we start from that, when we start about caring about the people around us and wanting good things for them and really thinking about how can I help? How can I be there for the people around me? It feels like that's the beginning to good things.
It is. By the same token, though, you also need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Because if you aren't taking care of yourself, you can't take care of others.
That's a great point.
And it's a hard lesson. It's something I struggle with. But, I mean, for real, if you are spending all of your spoons taking care of everybody else around you, and you have no spoons for you, you're going to get sick.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be physically, whether it be from stress, whether it be emotionally, any of a number of ways, or all of those ways.
What are some ways, have you discovered any ways to recognize that in yourself and then realize that you're not taking that time for yourself and divert from that path?
Some of it's just going okay, I'm really drained. I feel like I'm starting to come down with something. I need to step back. This person or these persons are taking over my life, and I don't have a sense of me anymore. It's my taking care of them. And, obviously, if we have kids, we have to take care of them. I mean, that's reality. And I have a 15 going on 16-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And, that this was daddy-daughter time last week.
Nice.
So instead of, cutting it all off for COVID or cutting it short like some people have, we colored my hair and she had a blast.
That's awesome.
And I came out this morning from the office and she'd shaved her hair again. Buzz cut.
Wow.
So yeah, I think it's like the second or third time since COVID started that she's done so.
Just a reflection, is that an outreach of like something we can control, where we want to have control over something in that way?
I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is just feeling stuck and wanting a change, anything to change.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a bit of each, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, this is something I can do. I can try something new. I don't have to be around people.
Right.
It's kind of a safe time.
Mm-hmm.
We homeschool, so
Mm-hmm.
she was in a position where, she was able to try things out with her hair anyway.
That's great.
But we would go martial arts, and which unfortunately she hasn't been able to do since COVID started.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that hasn't helped people. It definitely hasn't helped her. I'm sure it hasn't helped people in general. Going from a regular established, not just exercise, but just a routine.
Absolutely.
Humans, as much as we might want to deny it, are creatures of habit. And when our routines get, even if it's the routine of getting up and going into the office, it's very disconcerting, and change is stressful. We don't react very well as change. As an aside, any species who's been prey at some point tends not to do very well with change.
Right.
I mean, if you look at, say, cats,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the room changed. What's going on here? Do I have to worry about something getting me?
Right.
Where
are the hiding spots? How can I,
Yep, exactly.
do I have to watch out for?
Yeah. And so, all of us have been affected by, the events this year. If for anyone to suggest that they haven't, I would either they have been in a monastery with a vow of silence and no news,
right?
Or they're trying to sell you something, or it's more to the point, trying to sell themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if that's really what you think, that you are perfectly copacetic and nothing has changed in your life, maybe if you're an author who works from home, who doesn't do anything but be on the computer all day and doesn't leave the house, maybe. But
even then,
the
effect that it's had on the people around us, the people that we care about, and that's essentially impossible to avoid.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. So once you build on a basis of compassion, recognize everyone's different and we all respond to things in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead. So a couple of things you mentioned that I want to circle back on.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about things that we say that
Yes.
that it may have a tendency to exacerbate issues, to grow that stigma. Are there some things that maybe we can say instead that are good substitutes?
Yes. Things such as you're important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I care about you. Things like, you know what? I see you're having a hard day. What can we do to help?
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay?
So one of the things that came to mind was when we have that urge to say, that's crazy or that's insane, what are some good words? Obviously, we can find them, but it's great to have just a few that we can really pull quickly and replace that word with instead of saying that word.
That's remarkable. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's wow. I never thought that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gobsmacked.
That's a fantastic word.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
it's just I know there's so many to choose from. It's just sometimes nice to have a few that are just right there. Yeah. As we say with habit, as you mentioned, we are creatures of habit. We are used to doing a certain thing, and so we have to have those little specific ways to change that habit, I think.
Right, and practice makes perfect.
Absolutely.
And I've been concentrating this for about 2 years now, and I still do it. The habit of decades is really hard to overcome.
So true.
And just taking the first step, being cognizant of what you say and how what you say can impact and affect others is a great place to start.
Are there any other ways that you found to reduce stigma that you found really valuable for that?
You know what? Stigma are those things that people don't talk about because it isn't proper. It's wrong. Oh my God. What is wrong with that person? I'm going to stay away from them, else I'm going to get cooties. All of those things are things that are ways of expressing stigma. You don't want to be around that person. They have problems. You don't want their problems to affect your work, do you? And, the first step to ending stigma is to start to talk about it. For instance, there was at one point a far greater stigma around the topic of homosexuality than what there is today. People started talking about it. Yes, some people who were activists got in your face about it. This is me. This is who I am. And you know what? I don't care what you think. Or you're going to accept that I exist, that I'm a person.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, I'm going to be in your face until you do. And, so I'm not saying that we need to be that sort of person necessarily, but just starting to talk about it and say, hey, these are things that are going on with me. These are things that I have learned. Helping people who maybe don't have mental health issues to understand what it is to have mental health issues. One thing that I had done last year was put together as a service project, a simulator for living a month in the life of somebody with bipolar. And me being the geek that I am, because it would take about 20 minutes to go through manually. I wrote code to test that the scenarios, and 5,000 runs in 2.5 minutes versus
right.
But it's one of those things that the more we talk about a thing, the more open we are about a thing, then, the less it becomes stigmatic, the less people look down upon a thing. That's just the way somebody is. And you know what? Okay, yes, I'm bipolar. I've worked very hard to become stable. And I have my good days, I have my bad days, but I have reached the point where I can say, you know what? I'm feeling depressed today. Okay, I still have things I need to get done. Let it go and move on. Now, that might not work for everybody. Different people respond and react in different ways. But that's one thing that happens to work for me. And I'm open about it. I'm out of the closet, and there are people with whom I talk at work about it, and my manager knows, and so forth. And there are actually some aspects of bipolar that can be helpful. The days where I'm not manic, but I'm a little hyper, and I learn stuff. And if the system's down, I can figure out really, really quick what happened. And that can be a strength. However, days where I have mental fog are, the other side of the coin. And so on those days, you put into effect coping mechanisms, you write stuff down, and, it's something that somebody who has, gets distracted easily might need to do anyway. Write things down, keep track of them. Otherwise, you probably are going to forget. And, that's just human nature. So everybody who has mental health issues will come up with their own coping mechanisms and their ways of living with it. But yes, the starting is start talking about it, be open about it. And, those days where I am bright and sharp, oh my God, I am bright and sharp. I mean, I can look at something and tell you, or I can knock out, several hundred lines of code in very short order, and it just works and it's brilliant and so forth and so on. Of course, the next day, if I'm in a brain fog, I'll look at it and it's like, what was I thinking? But no, I mean, it's got its pluses and minuses. And so, the times where I might be a little more hyper, okay, I don't sleep as much, but I don't really feel sleepy, and I can get a lot done, and I tend to be very creative. And that's not a bad thing in and of itself, as long as it's in moderation. When it starts to rule somebody's life, then that's a problem. Other things that you might need to look out for if you're bipolar is impulse control. I think I'll have enough money for that later in the month, or, to pay, to buy food or whatever. I can do this right now. It'll be okay.
Right.
Or, other choices that somebody might make that aren't necessary, that are impulsive in nature.
Gotcha.
And, recognizing that that's a problem is part of, growing up and learning to maintain and live with an illness. Just like somebody who has diabetes shouldn't be going out eating candy,
right,
or cookies or cake or what have you. And, that's just, there are things that you do and things that you shouldn't do for your own health.
And you have to kind of set those boundaries for yourself
and
understand what you're capable of in certain scenarios.
Yes. And it can be helpful to have somebody to talk to who understands, 12-step is a thing. 12-step can be very helpful for people. Or even just having someone that you trust that you can go and talk to, saying, hey, I'm having problems with this. Or, hey, can you help me keep, doing what I need to be doing? I know that ultimately it's my choice and my responsibility, but can you look out for me some?
So on that note, have you ever met anyone that you feel like was a particularly good ally, and what did they do that you found to be helpful?
So, I have met some people who have, and, generally those who tend to be, though, are people who have mental health issues to begin with. They're more advocates than allies.
Gotcha.
However, I have found people who are there. I think that the main traits that they have are openness, a willingness to understand, genuine caring, listening, and also at the same time, the ability to say if somebody's saying, oh, this is crazy, this is insane, what have you, to say, you know what, that's not really that cool to say. Maybe you might want to do this. Or, if somebody is, bad talking a person, saying on the job, it's like, did you know that? And you can say things without, outing somebody.
Or just, even saying, let's try to consider maybe what's going on in their life, or
exactly.
We have no idea what
Right.
challenges they're facing.
Exactly.
So just having that compassion and understanding.
Right. And, if you are compassionate and understanding, it kind of rubs off from you onto other people. And people that you encounter are more likely to respond in that fashion. So
that's, so important.
It is.
We inspire the people around us in the way that we act.
Yes.
So if we are staying positive and we are being encouraging and compassionate, then that will lead others around us to do similar things.
Right.
And if we are being diminutive and just or talking down to someone, that will lead others to follow in our path as well.
And you'll attract people around you who do that more often as well. A lot of faiths and a lot of philosophies have the idea of, treating people how you would like to be treated yourself, or as two very wise people put it, be excellent to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go through life endeavoring to be excellent to other people, then I think that your life will be a lot better, and the lives of those around you will be better. And you will tend to attract excellent people.
I absolutely agree. That's a fantastic point. Anything else that you'd like to discuss around this topic that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about IT and the incidence in IT.
Yes.
So I had mentioned earlier that in the United States, in a given year, anywhere from approximately 20%, but it's anywhere from 18 to 25% of people may have a mental health issue at some point during the year. For what it's worth, mental health issues are the largest cause of disability within the United States.
Wow.
But so getting back to the anecdote, I was like, okay, let's research this. Let's see if people have actually studied it.
Mm-hmm.
And I found 3 studies.
Okay.
One was in the US in the 50s. The second was published in 1990 in Japan. And that one, so Japan has a higher cultural stigma towards mental health issues than we do here by a lot. Mm-hmm. They report a 5% incidence, which everybody knows is bogus, but that's what they report. Mm-hmm. So out of a set of approximately 100 people, computer software engineers, computer people in 1990 in Japan, 34 of them could be diagnosed under the DSM guidelines.
Wow.
Up to 60% of them exhibited some sort of anxiety. Out of the 34 who could be diagnosed under the DSM guidelines, only 1 sought help.
Wow.
And the last thing that the study said was there needs to be more studies.
Yeah.
The next study that I found took place in 2006 in India's Silicon Valley.
Okay.
And out of that study, 36% of the people who participated exhibited some form of mental health issues.
So similar to the Japanese study.
Yes, a bit higher, but yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, we have Japan, which is, basically westernized.
Mm-hmm.
India, not so much, except this is their Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
So we could still make an argument that, okay, based off of those 2 points, it's not apples to apples, but it's close enough that we could make a strong case for the incidence of mental health issues being more prevalent in IT than in the population at large.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, obviously, there have been no studies, but
is there a reason for that? Do you know if there's just a particular reason why that hasn't happened?
I don't know of a reason per se.
Okay.
I have some guesses, but they are just guesses. I think that certain personality types are drawn to IT.
Mm-hmm.
People who are very attention to detail and detail oriented.
Mm-hmm.
People who are or thrive on stress. People who, and it's anecdotal again, and there's not a correlation, but creative people. And also people who get along better with computers than other people. People who don't quite understand people very well.
I've definitely heard anecdotes that particularly things like autism and Asperger's are particularly common amongst IT people. Yes.
And I am not a mental health professional. Insert standard disclaimers, but
right.
Yes.
Anecdotal.
I have observed that. I have between two very large not-for-profit in the Columbus area that are within data, one in library science and one in chemistry, observed that there are quite a few people who one might consider to be somewhere on the autism spectrum.
Okay.
Or, people who are very detail oriented. And, for someone who's a tester, that's not a bad trait to have.
True.
For someone who's a developer to turn out decent code, that's not in and of itself, as long as it doesn't rule your life, a bad trait to have. So as a result, I think that IT can emphasize, reinforce certain traits, certain tendencies that people who have certain forms of mental health issues might be inclined to have, to perform. And obviously, this is just conjecture here. But, there are some aspects, as long as it is not controlling your life, people who are very detail-oriented, that's not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
People who are creative, that's a really good thing. People who, understand the way that computers work, that's also a good thing. However, we are people. We need to be able to communicate with other people. And any computer problem ultimately is a people problem. We're trying to solve problems for people. So as much as you might want to be the geek who's locked back in the corner that doesn't have to do with anything with anybody, being able to interact with people is a very useful skill.
Completely agree. So any final recommendations to, people and how they can be better allies or take better care of themselves, or just dealing with mental illness in general?
One way is to help educate yourself.
Mm.
If you understand more about what mental health issues really are, what mental illness really is, then you're going to take away a lot of the mystery. You're going to take away a lot of the taboo of it. Talk with other people, learn about it, be conscious of your language. And part of language is body language. If you're saying something and you have a totally different statement in your body language, it's going to show. People will understand that. Encourage a sense of equality between physical and mental illnesses. We are not just a machine. We are, a whole thing. And, popping a pill works for some things. Other things require lifelong care. And sometimes, working on yourself means learning coping mechanisms and learning things that are good for you to do or things that are not good for you to do. As a parent, and this might sound awful, but you know what? Sometimes letting your kid touch the hot stove is not a bad thing. They're going to learn that I don't want to do that. They're going to learn real quick, and you're there to make sure that they don't really hurt themselves. But if they touch it and it's hot, they're going to learn. Mm-hmm. And learning how to take care of yourself is part of growing up, part of being, somebody who is able to live in our society. And I say this as, it took me a long time to get stable. And then I lost a lot of ground after having that med reaction. Mm-hmm. And I was really, really peeved about that. Because, I had done all this hard work and gotten to a point, and all of a sudden I'm having symptoms that I hadn't had in a long time. And I'm having to, relearn coping mechanisms and re-go through things. And it's like, oh, this is so frustrating. And I was angry. Mm-hmm. And legitimately so. It's like, I lost all this ground. Another way is to show compassion for people with mental illness or mental health issues. And then choosing empowerment over shame. Don't shame people. Don't, oh, you're just, such and such. A lot of times, somebody might bring in a gender issue here. Somebody might say, oh, you're just depressed all the time, or you're a wimp, man up, or whatever. That doesn't help anybody. Be honest about your treatment. I take a medication daily. I am very unusual in that I see my psychiatrist once a year. I worked hard to get there, and he does not have many patients who do. But he knows that if I have an issue, I will call him. Mm-hmm. And we have established that trust. And if you see in the media, in television, in books, on the news, where they're stigmatizing somebody who has mental health issues, let them know. In the world of Twitter or Facebook, it's real easy to let somebody know. And real easy to get lots of people to let them know.
Right.
And, don't harbor self-stigma. I am who I am. Okay, bipolar is part of who I am. I'm not going to let it rule me. I will live with it. And there are things I have to do from day to day, but it's part of who I am. I'm not going to stigmatize myself over it. Now, do I regret some of the choices that I made and some of the things that I did before I started getting help? Yes, I do. And I've gone back and apologized to people and saying, hey, I'm really, really sorry. But, I'm not going to stigmatize myself over it. It's part of who I am. And that's pretty much ways that you could help.
I think that's some great stuff. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So thank you again, Matt. And I just hope that we can get that message out, and that we can help people learn to be excellent to each other.
Indeed.
And is there any thing? Clearly, we're going to put the link to the slides in the notes here. And is there anything else that you want to call out before we go?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
In present days, in the days of COVID, where, we don't have a lot of interaction with people, if you are feeling depressed, if you are feeling like you might hurt yourself, if you're feeling like you have no place to go, no one, no options, please seek help. Please talk to someone. Within the slides, if you can find that page, there's a number for our suicide helpline, as well as some other things. If you can just
put that in the notes as
note
well.
them in there. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, you're not alone. Don't ever think you're alone. And it takes, well, let me read something to you from Carrie Fisher to close on.
Thank you.
One of the things that baffles me is how there can be so much lingering stigma with regards to mental illness, specifically bipolar disorder. In my opinion, living with manic depression takes a tremendous amount of balls. So, it's not weak to admit that you need help. If you break your leg, you're going to go see a doctor. If you have the flu or have COVID, you're going to see somebody. If you have diabetes, you're going to have treatment. There is nothing wrong with reaching out to others. Thank you for the opportunity to share this evening.
It's been a pleasure, Matt.
Indeed.
And,
thank you.
Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks.